Hey everyone, it's Sunday, October 6th, 2024, and what that means is another edition of Montreal Hockey Talk. On tonight's episode, the preseason is done. No more talking about exhibition games. The regular season starts on Wednesday. What are the Canadiens going to look like? We'll discuss. Along with that, I'm going to talk about somebody that called me out in the comments from last time's show when we talked about Patrick Laine's injury, and I got called out for apparently being a homer. I'm going to have some fun with you, buddy. And finally, some news and notes from around the National Hockey League. All that and more right now, because it's time for Montreal Hockey Talk. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Montreal Hockey Talk. I am Costa Popolias, or who everybody affectionately calls Coach K. Now, before we get started, as usual, I'm going to ask you guys to like, subscribe to our page, and hit the notifications bell so that you can get episodes like these where I rant about bullshit that some people say online and don't have the guts to say in my face. That's the majority of my life, but anyway. I love doing this stuff, guys. I smile when I do it because when you challenge me, I absolutely love it. Now, in talking about getting challenged, one of the things that I did today, guys, because I'm really happy about it, is I went to a local under 18 game here in St. Lazare, Quebec, where I do live. And it was fun because I hadn't been in the rink in a very long time in the capacity of just watching a game and scouting a team. And so I had a lot of fun evaluating players for a friend of mine because it was his team. And next week, they've invited me to actually be behind the bench. So Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock, if you want to make down to St. Lazare, to the Complexe Sportif St. Lazare, I will be behind the bench for Les Faucons of Le Sommet Academy. It's going to be a lot of fun because I love being behind the bench, man. It's so much fun. I miss it. I miss it. I miss it. And why do I miss it? Because I take the time to do this for you. Now, let's talk about our first subject of the day. And of course, it's the biggest one. And that is the fact that the preseason is finally dead and buried. And now it's time to talk about the regular season. Now, everybody's talking about what they want the lineups to look like. And I put together a couple of graphics, thanks to, of course, in large part, Daily Faceoff. But I did manage to putz around with them a little bit so that I give you my take on what I think should happen as far as the lineups are concerned. Now, we'll start with the forwards. And now, of course, the first couple of lines, let's say 95% of them, are exactly what people say. You're going to have Nick Suzuki along with Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky on the first line. The second line will be Kirby Dach at center, Alex Newhook on the wing, and my choice for the right winger on the second line, not somebody that's been with the team for the last 5 years or 4 years or whatever time it is, but somebody new. Somebody who I think will bring something to the table, and that, of course, is Oliver Kapanen. Now, in talking about Kapanen, let me bring this up for you, okay? And this is the scouting report on Kapanen. They talk about his instincts a lot in the offensive zone, combined with his ability to finish. And that's something that we haven't seen very much of in the preseason, but Kapanen has finished a couple of times, and he has been very good at distributing the puck, finding open space, and making sure that he finds open passing lanes for his teammates. And that's not something that we see very often. So when you've got guys like Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach who are we are well aware are capable of putting the puck in the net, you want a guy like an Oliver Kapanen to be able to dish them the puck. And Kapanen's got a capacity to be able to finish as well. So when you've got that combination, you want to give this guy a chance. And I don't want to send him back to Sweden. I want to see, at least for a little bit, what that man is able to do. Because I think he's got a lot to bring to the table. And I think for the Montreal Canadiens, it would be an asset to give him a little bit more NHL experience with some better competition so that this way we can really see what Oliver Kapanen is all about. Now, we continue to look at the lines, and you've got who I think is going to be there is Joshua Roy on the left wing, along with Christian Dvorak and Josh Anderson. And, you know, Anderson could be a discussion point for another day because he really didn't do much in the preseason. but he normally doesn't do a lot in the preseason, so I'm not going to say anything about that right now. I'll wait a few games before I pass judgment on Anderson. Then there's the fourth line, where we've got Brendan Gallagher, Jake Evans, and Yoel Armia. Now, in talking about that, here's where my thinking comes in as far as, Jake Evans and keeping Oliver Kapanen, because Kapanen can be a stopgap for Evans in case Evans does start to falter. So it's a two-edged sword. Kapanen is naturally a center. He's played wing in the past, as he's said himself in interviews countless times. So his ability to be able to help this team is twofold. Because if he does struggle on the second line, then okay, you could put him as the fourth line center, give him limited minutes, and let him get his footing. But if he does show well on the second line, then you've got options. So, the way the lines look, and I'll put them up again for you guys to see. I mean, it goes without saying that, hang on a sec. Sorry about that. I'm still suffering from a cold and I had to cough, so I apologize. Now, as I look at it again, these are the strongest four lines that I can see this team putting together. Now, the odd man out on the forwards, right, would be somebody like an Emil Heineman. Now, that being said, guys like Joshua Roy, Heineman, Kapanen, they don't need to be waiver eligible. So keeping them on the roster would be a plus for the Canadiens. I think that Heineman has done enough to actually make this team, right? But when I look at the body of work as far as what's been done, Joshua Roy has impressed me. I know Joshua Roy does have a defensive side to his game, so I would prefer keeping him in a third-line role on the wing, whereas Heineman is a little bit more of an offensive-minded player, so I would like to see him either third or second line. But, again, I think Kapanen brings more to the table on the offensive side of things, so that's why Emil Heineman is my guy outside looking in. But he is there. He is my 13th forward. Now, in regards to the defense, that's where it gets interesting because everybody and their mother doesn't think that Logan Mailloux should make the team. And here's basically what I put out there, and I agree in a certain extent. Obviously, you've got Mike Matheson and Caden Gooley up on the first pairing. You've got Lade Hudson and David Savard on the second pairing. And then I have Jaden Struble and Justin Barron on the third pairing. But granted, I'm not very high on Justin Barron, and I haven't been for the longest time because I don't believe defensively he is strong enough to play at the National Hockey League level. Offensively, there is no doubt that this guy can play. He brings something to the table when it comes to offense. But if you're going to have him on your bottom pairing, you either need to put him with somebody who's a veteran presence, who's able to control the puck and control the play and can actually get him to, dial it back a little bit, or you've got to make sure he plays with a guy who's completely defensive-minded. And who's that exactly on the Montreal Canadiens? It's not Jaden Struble, despite the fact that Struble is very strong in his own zone and is good offensively. It's not Arber Xhekaj, because Arber Xhekaj, again, he's good in both ends, but he's not really that steady presence on defense that you can count on 24/7. And Logan Mailloux is going to be that player because we've seen that he's able to do things on the defensive side of the puck. It's offensively that he can't really contribute. So would I like to see Justin Barron on there? I think given the fact that he's got more NHL experience than the other guys, yes, I think Barron's going to be there. I don't want to see Logan Mailloux go to the American Hockey League because there are going to be games available to a bunch of different players, okay? And I want that fight to continue between the bottom four. I don't want it to be, okay, guys, you're off. So what I want to see, which is a little different than everybody else, because most teams do carry 14 forwards, 7 defense, and their 2 goaltenders making up the 23-man roster. I want to actually see the breakdown be 13 forwards, 8 defense, and the 2 goaltenders. Because I think the battle on defense is what's the most interesting part of this team right now. Scoring, it remains to be seen. What is going to happen in the absence of Patrick Laine? Will the Canadiens be able to bring secondary scoring from the second line and below? Nobody knows. The X factor there would have been if Patrick Laine was still on this hockey team, but he's not. So now the question is, can somebody fill in a moderate role to replace the numbers that we think Laine was going to provide? And will that person be able to augment the offensive side of things for both Newhook and Doc? Now, the return of Newhook is part of what has been missing for the past season, right? 2 games last year, not even 2 games, 5 periods, let's say, in the regular season last year before he got injured. And, everybody wants to see what Kirby Dach brings to the table. And in the preseason, we kind of saw some of that magic come back, what people expected of him when he was picked by the Chicago Blackhawks. Is that going to translate to a full season of health for him with the Montreal Canadiens? I don't know, guys. It's not a question that anybody can answer, right? Because bodies break down nonstop. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But by and large, I mean, I think that the Montreal Canadiens should carry 13-8. And if in the 5 games they make a decision, send one down, bring one up, bring it to 14-7. But I think coming out of the gate, 13-8 is the way to go. So you give these defensemen a chance to show what they can do against actual National Hockey League competition. And I guarantee you that with that competition, the guy who's going to come a little bit higher on that cream, the cream of the crop that I'm talking about, will probably be Logan Mailloux. Because defensively, he's the most solid of the 4 guys that's looking at the bottom 2 rows. So I'd like to see that continue and progress. Now, do you think the same? I doubt that. There are a lot of people out there that don't agree with my way of thinking. But given the circumstances and given the fact that the Montreal Canadiens are extremely strong on the defensive side of things, I would like to see them actually try to decide defensively who they're going to move forward with. And why do I say that? That comes to my next point. I don't trust Arber Xhekaj. Okay, and this goes to the precursor that I brought up at the beginning of the show when somebody called me out in the comments about, not calling out Canadiens players who make dumb plays. I thought jumping Cedric Parry from behind was a dumb play. Okay, I said it straight up in that show that you put the puck softly into a corner, you punish the guy with some hits, and then when the timing's right, you drop the gloves and you go, right? That's what I thought should have happened with Parry. I don't want to see another Steve Moore incident a la Bertuzzi where he jumped him from behind and crippled the guy and ended his NHL career. I don't want to see that. So I will not condone what Arber Xhekaj did. Do I condone the reason behind it? Sure. Because the hit on Patrick Laine was dirty. Okay? Well, sorry. Let me rephrase that. It wasn't dirty. It was reactionary. And it was an extremely bad reaction by a player who has no business being in an NHL rink. Okay? You've seen Cedric Parry. You've seen the video, most of you out there, of Cedric Parry taking a slash to somebody while he was playing ball hockey. Now, if you're going to do that while you're playing ball hockey, obviously you don't have the skill set or the mindset to be able to think properly when you're playing against NHL competition. So, yeah. Do I think the reasoning behind what Xhekaj did was good? Sure. The way it was done? No. And then we get to what I was called out about, and that was the hit on Tim Stützle. Was the idea of hitting Tim Stützle straight up right? No. By and large, in my eyes, it was interference. It was not 5 in a game because Stützle hit himself in the face with his own bloody stick. And Arber Xhekaj hit him in the chest. So my thought process on it would have been, okay, the player hurt himself with his own stick as a result of the hit by Xhekaj. Was it interference? Yes. Was there blood? Yes. To me, that's 4 minutes. Period. It's not an ejection. It's not nothing. It's 4 minutes, and you're gone. You're gone for those 4 minutes. It's a double minor. And what happens? Instead of the Ottawa Senators changing the game around completely on that power play, what do? They get a goal, maybe 2, and the game remains competitive. But the officials decided, it's 5 in a game. It wasn't 5 in a game. He didn't go for his head. He hit him in the chest. You can watch the replay as many times as you want. Now, here's where I get a little pissed off. And that is with people that turn around and say that I'm not objective about hits. 1,000,000 times over, I have always brought it to the table about Canadiens that make bad hits. I don't like some of the hits that Michael Pezzetta throws out there. I really don't. I think they're marginal at best. Sometimes they're in the numbers. I don't like some of the hits that Arber Xhekaj throws. Honestly, because they're borderline. And I don't like borderline hits. Do I like the solid contact? Absolutely. I don't know anybody that doesn't. But if you're going to stand there on the internet, you're going to type up that I'm not objective, watch the season progress and watch how much I complain about people that don't know how to hit. I do that with junior teams that I work with, where I complain about players that throw bad hits, that have lousy timing when they try to throw a hip check, which I think is a lost art form, by the way. or when they play too much outside the dots and allow the inside lane for players, which the Canadiens do quite a bit as well. And I've complained about for years, especially on Twitter. And people that have followed me, especially in the early days of Montreal Hockey Talk, they've heard me talk about playing between the dots ad nauseum, right? So let's call it what it is. But when you're going to sit there on the internet and type away, what are you going to say about this hit? I'm going to say exactly what I just said. It wasn't a dirty hit. It was a badly timed, inappropriate, stupid hit. But it wasn't dirty because it was in the chest. It wasn't at his head. Stützle had his hands in front of him. Arber Xhekaj made contact with his hands. His hands came up and smacked him in his own face, and he cut himself. 4 minutes, a double minor, despite the fact he hit himself with his own goddamn stick, which most of the time is not even a freaking penalty. So you be the judge. Was it a dirty hit? No, it wasn't. It was stupid. Stützle didn't have the puck. Why hit him? Because of what happened the game before or earlier in the game with Craig on Kirby Dock? There's the reason why I don't trust Arber Xhekaj. Hockey isn't about revenge, all right? The sweetest revenge in the game of hockey is tallying one up on a scoreboard and really making the other team hurt. Getting a penalty by doing something stupid like hitting Tim Stützle when he doesn't have the puck, that's not going to do anything to the other team. And Stützle, he's out, right? Why? Because he has swelling under his eye because of the cut. It's not because a major injury. He doesn't have a concussion. Okay, people? It's a cut. Swollen under his eye, limits his vision of the ice. So what does he do? He stays off the ice. So they call it an upper body injury. It is what it is. What happened to Tkachuk? I don't know. After the fact, when he jumped Arber Xhekaj, I have no idea because I didn't see anything. But he's out with an upper body injury as well because of this whole stupid situation, right? It was a dumb play. And it's a play that puts your team in a precarious position, especially if this happened in the regular season. Well, what would you say? Right? You sit there and you say to yourself, Arber Xhekaj, come on, man. 5 minutes and you'd be sitting here up in arms, despite the fact that the league probably 9 times out of 10 gets it right. They didn't this time, but they normally do when they look at the replay. And that's the way it's going to be, guys, right? When there are things that are questionable, the referees are going to err on the side of caution, and they're going to call the 5-minute penalty. And then they're going to review and decide whether or not it should be a 5 or something less than that, a 4 or a 2. That's what I think should have happened here. It didn't. Whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, the referees are doing exactly what they're told. And it shouldn't be any surprise. And it wasn't to Marty St. Louis. He expected it to be reviewed. I don't know whether or not he expected it to go to a major. I don't think he did. But it is what it is. He knew it would be reviewed. The referees made the decision. And that's the end of the story. The Canadiens ended up shorthanded for 5 minutes, and the Ottawa Senators took advantage. Okay, move forward. What's the problem? Arber Xhekaj. It's the same thing over and over again. It's questionable, and it's the same thing he did last year. That's the whole reason why I said that I didn't want him on the defensive squad and that he should start the season in the American Hockey League. Lessons learned, man. You've got to earn your ice time, and you got to be smart about your ice time. You can't sit there and say, oh, I'm the toughest guy on the team, so I'm going to be able to make the team. No, that's not how it works, man. In that vein, you would say, okay, Michael Pezzetta is automatically on the Canadiens. I don't have him on the roster. Did you notice? Because Michael Pezzetta, yes, he brings a certain style to play, but like I said, he makes questionable hits. He fights when he shouldn't, and he does contribute with the odd goal, but it's rare, right? What does he have? I don't even know what his year maximum is, his career high or season high is. I don't know because it's not important as opposed to doing the smart thing on the ice. And now Arber Xhekaj has spoken to Chris Nyland about this stuff, and Nyland's the expert. If you listen to Chris Nyland and the way he speaks about the way the game should be played, it was always the same way. You never put your team in a precarious position. George Larac will tell you that. And I don't particularly like George's comments online or on his show on BPM Sports, but because it's got blinders on, right? He sees it only as an enforcer and not a player as a whole. Arber Xhekaj doesn't have to be an enforcer. Can he be? Yes. Does he need to be? No. I think given the fact that he can make a good first pass. He's good in his own zone. He's got a bomb from the blue line. I think he has more to bring to the table. But so many of us focus on his physical play and what he's able to do with his fists and the size of his hands that we don't let him play hockey. And I think we, as fans, encourage him to do the stupid stuff so that he can get the team going, right? Like Chris Nyland is the guy that talked to him about not celebrating after a fight, right? Grabbing the Canadiens logo and fluttering it in the air. That's not what you do, man. Because it's not the Canadiens that are fighting the other player. It's Arber Xhekaj, so you should be actually grabbing the back of it and doing it with your nameplate. But there's a time and a place for that kind of stuff. You can't do it all the time, right? And that's kind of what has been happening with Arber Xhekaj. He's been doing it more often than he should, right? If he could, look at what Ryan Reeves said about him, right? When he jumped Cedric Paré. He said, yeah, I understand why he did it. Doesn't mean that he did it the right way, and that's where Reeves left it. Because that's what enforcers do. They don't overplay something. They don't turn around and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to get you because of it. He just said, yeah, I agree with why he did it. Oh, done. Are they going to scrap it out when the season starts? Probably. I could foresee it. But in all likelihood, you may not even see Arber Xhekaj in the lineup in that first game. I think you will, because of the fact that Reeves will probably be there as well. But it's for all the wrong reasons. Why you're going to send Ryan Reeves out there to punish Arber Xhekaj? Okay, because Arber Xhekaj is going to get that through his thick skull that he shouldn't do it. The only way that kid's going to get not doing what he did is by sitting and understanding that there's a time and a place for the fisticuffs and there's a time and a place to play the game of hockey. This team needs to score goals. This team needs to be on the positive side of the ledger now. We're trying to move up as far as the rebuild is concerned. Sure, the Line A injury sets us back, but you don't want other players limiting the team's ability to play on the offensive side of the game. That is what the decisions that Arber Xhekaj has made this preseason have done. So, do I want him there? I do. I like the enforcer role. I like the guy that scares the crap out of the other team. But do I trust him? Not yet. I think that's going to take a little bit of time and a few games of doing the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing. Now, we're going to talk about a few NHL news and notes. Yeah, one of the big things and that we're going to talk about is the discussion that they should only have 4 preseason games as opposed to the 6 that they have now. And previously to that, it was 8 and 9 that we used to have. So I agree with this, right? I think that the 4 preseason games, which should be strictly for players that are trying to make the Montreal Canadiens or any team in the National Hockey League, much like the NFL does, where guys that are set in their positions, like the quarterback, for example, starting quarterback, he'll see what? A series, a half, a quarter maybe, but he won't see more than that because they don't want him to get injured previous to the regular season. And that's what happens most of the time. There's that bloody cough again. Sorry about that. So I want to see the Canadiens play less preseason games. I don't want there to be 6 of them. I don't want to see guys like Line A getting injured all the time. If they're going to get injured in the regular season, great, no problem. It happens, right? Because you're playing a game. But I don't want to see them get injured in a nothing game. And when you talk about injuries, here's a small, okay, and I'm exaggerating here, a small list of players that are currently injured, okay? We talked about Stützle, who I think is going to be back because, like I said, it's swelling under the eye. There's Brady Tkachuk, who's got an upper body injury. We don't know what that is, whether it's a shoulder, whether it's an elbow. We don't know. You got Arturi Panarin, lower body. David Reinbacher, lower body. Patrick Laine, lower body. Drew Doughty, lower body. Macklin Celebrini, lower body. William Nylander and Thomas Chabot, undisclosed. You've got Calvin Pickard, upper body, and Jimmy Vesey, lower body. And that's just the guys that are expected to be out a few weeks, right? In the case of Reinbacher, it's going to be the entire season. And for Doughty, it would probably be just as long. And Line is expected to be 2 to 3 months. The others, we really don't know yet. But just to give you an example of guys that are not just the schlubs, right? They're not just guys that are trying to make the National Hockey League. These guys, other than Celebrini, are established players. And so when you have established players getting injured, it kind of sets the team back. You saw what it did last year when Kirby Dach got injured. The Montreal Canadiens had no idea what to do with the power play at that point because that's what they had designed it for. They designed it to have Kirby Dach on the power play. But without him there, what does the second unit look like? We saw what it looked like. It looked like shit. So what do? You try to avoid those injuries. You try to avoid playing those players in the preseason. And like a lot of players, you're going to have guys that want to be out there, that want to play. And you know what? How you get them to play? You have inter-team scrimmages. You have enough players in camp, 40 plus or thereabouts, where you can split the team in half, and you can have split squad games amongst yourselves where you know the guys aren't going to play dirty or make stupid decisions on the ice, right? You get to see what they're able to do. Hit? Sure. Do stupid shit? Probably not. Especially when it's your own team, right? The competition level is not the same when you're playing against guys that are your teammates. I can tell you that 1,000%. But when you're playing opposition who are of lesser skill, that's where the injuries occur. And I rattled off a list of 12 guys that are that were supposed to have significant impacts on their teams, including Reinbacher. And what happened? None of them are playing right now. And none of them are going to start the season as yet. Like I said, Stützle and Xhekaj, that might change. But it's like, come on. You know, give me a break with the injuries. So 4 games, more than enough. And you want to take the other 2 and attach them to the regular season to go to 84 games? Great. I have no problem with that because then the rosters are set. When rosters are set and you have NHL caliber players in the lineup, I'm fine with that. It's when you have the guys that shouldn't even be playing in the AHL. They should be playing in the ECHL, a la Cedric Paré. That's where I have a problem. Because we see a lot of these guys, you know, guys straight out of junior that are trying out at their first National Hockey League camp. And the way that goes is they go from the NHL camp to the AHL camp to their junior camps or to the ECHL camp, depending on their situation. That's what normally happens. So what do you expect? Of course, guys are going to get injured. So you take it out of the hands of the teams. 4 exhibition games. Maybe the last one you have some of your starters in it, or the last 2. But the first 2, your starters shouldn't even sniff those games. And it limits your ability to get them out there, limits the time they have to get injured. And lo and behold, we start the season with the best players in the National Hockey League on the ice, ready to go. Extremely important. And the other thing, as far as NHL news and notes are concerned, is that Jeremy Swayman finally signed with the Boston Bruins, 8 years, average annual salary of $8.25 million. All I have to say is, what took so freaking long? I don't think anybody out there thought that this was going to go beyond the beginning of the regular season. I don't think anybody out there thought that this was going to go until December and the Bruins would have to go out and get themselves another goalie, which they did anyway, just in case. And after the comments made by Cam Neely, which I think were done, and hear me out here, I think they were done on purpose, right? Because Cam Neely's not the general manager, he's the president of the team. The general manager is Don Sweeney. And I think there was some infighting there with the Bruins. And this is just my opinion from the way things rolled out, right? Because that comment that Cam Neely made about he has 64 million reasons Jeremy Swayman should be signed, I don't think that was pointed at the agent. And I don't think it was pointed at Swayman because they said they never heard that before, right? As far as a number is concerned. I think it was pointed directly at Don Sweeney. And the reason why it was directed at Don Sweeney is because Don Sweeney decided to trade Linus Ullmark prior to signing Jeremy Swayman, and that handcuffs his team to begin with, right off the cuff, right? And then you're sitting there, and Jeremy Swayman is holding all the negotiating cards. Arbitration solves. He decides not to go to arbitration, which was his right, and he waits because arbitration is mudslinging 101 by the team, pure and simple. You could be the best player in the world. They will sling mud at you until you're blue in the face or brown in the face because it's mud. That's what they do. That's how they take care of arbitration cases, is they try to show the worst of players, not the best. You could be Wayne Gretzky with 200 points a season. You take them to arbitration for more money, they're going to try to do whatever they can to besmirch your reputation, to make you look like an ass in the eyes of the arbitrator so they don't have to pay you as much as you should be earning. That is what Swayman wanted to avoid. So he said, no arbitration for me. I just want to negotiate. And Don Sweeney didn't want to pay him. And so I think what Cam Neely did is pretty much called out Don Sweeney and said, listen, I gave you a budget. I told you can go up to $64 million. Did you offer it? Probably not. And so what he did publicly was he called him out. And he says, I have 64 million reasons why Jeremy Swayman should be signed. That didn't mean it came to that was directed at the agent. It was nice to let the agent know. And it wasn't directed at Jeremy Swayman, who I think knew his value, knew what he meant to the team as far as what he brings to the table, and wanted to make sure he got compensated for it. So good on him. It was directly at Don Sweeney. And it's not the type of thing you want to see aired out as dirty laundry from any team, regardless of whether it's the Bruins or not. Not that I don't like watching the Bruins and self-destruct and implode, but I think Cam Neely is passionate. We all know it, right? From the way he played back in the 80s, he wore his heart on his sleeve, right? He laid it all on the line every shift, every game. That's the reason why he had to retire early, because he destroyed his knees from the way he played. But he's like that as a manager as well, as the president of the team. He still wants to see the Bruins win every night, right? And so in order to do that, he wants to have the best players on the ice to get there. You're already missing the leadership of Patrice Bernier. Wow. He's been out of the league, what, a minute? Patrice Bergeron. Excuse me, Bernier. I'm thinking soccer here in Montreal. Patrice Bergeron. You're already missing that leadership. Brian Marchand, he's injured. He's not there right now. He's ill, whatever it is. You don't have Zdeno Chara anymore. Who do you have to lead the team? Jeremy Swayman is one of those names. Jeremy Swayman has already established himself as one of the leaders on that team. So you need to have him there, no matter what. And what do? You nickel and dime one of the best players on your team? There's something I never thought I'd hear. Nickel and diming your best player. I mean, come on. Good on Cam Neely. I was not a fan of Cam Neely when he played for the Bruins because he was a cap killer. But what he did in order to get Jeremy Swayman signed is a stroke of genius. And you may see it differently. That's the way I see it. I see him calling out his own GM publicly in order to get his players signed so they can move forward to the regular season. It was a situation I think he never thought was going to happen, or didn't think it was going to happen. And it did, because Don Sweeney didn't want to pay the money. Don Sweeney probably thought, I shouldn't be paying a goaltender $8 million. And Cam Neely publicly said, yes, pay my goalie $8 million. 8.25, a little bit more. I don't know if you guys remember, the situation with Swayman is extremely similar to what happened with Marc Bergevin and PK Subban. In the PK Subban situation, 2 years into that massive contract that they signed him to, they traded him away. But PK Subban wanted term. It wasn't all about the cash. And Marc Bergevin just kept on stretching it and stretching it and stretching it. And the longer he stretched it out, not only did it cost him term, but it cost him more money as things progressed and went along. Finally, PK got not only paid $9 million a year, but you got an eight-year contract out of it. And what happened? 2 years in, salut la visite, we're out of here. So it's extremely similar to that. Will that happen? Remains to be seen whether or not Don Sweeney rebels against his own president and trades away Jeremy Swayman. Don't think it's going to happen at an $8.25 million price tag, but hey, stranger things have happened in the National Hockey League, so we'll see. But at the end of the day, when you think about the whole situation, it was dumb to trade Omar so early. It was dumb to nickel and dime Swayman, and Cam Neely had to save the day for the Boston Bruins. They're a better team with Jeremy Swayman between the pipes. It'll probably take him a couple of games to get his mojo back because he didn't play any preseason games, but I think Swayman was the way to go. I think Cam Neely's got a contender in front of him now, and it's bad news for the Montreal Canadiens, but good news for the National Hockey League overall. So, lesson learned for Don Sweeney: don't mess with Seabass. I think we all learned that lesson a long time ago. That's it for tonight, folks. We'll see you next Sunday when we have a couple of regular season games under our belt and we finally get to see what the roster is going to look like. Because remember, the Canadiens can still put guys on waivers up until, I believe, Monday at midnight. So we'll see if anything does go down tomorrow and how the roster is going to shape up for opening day. Bye for now.